want to begin by apologizing for my voice. My coaching season began this week for basketball, and we didn't win, if you could tell. So it would be a little bit better if I had. And so if at some point I'm not projecting loud enough or you can't understand what I'm saying, just let me know, and I'll try even harder to get the words out. So let me begin with a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our conversation this afternoon. Father, thank you so much for your goodness. Thank you, Lord, so much that we can experience joy in Jesus. And Father, as we contemplate and as we prepare for a trip to Israel, Lord, we pray that you would not only prepare us intellectually, but Lord, that you prepare our hearts. That Father, this would be the trip of a lifetime as we immerse ourselves in your word, as we walk through redemptive history, where your hand has been so evident. Lord, to be able to walk where your son walked, to be able to pray where your son prayed. Lord, it's a joy and it's a blessing. And so, Lord, as we go through this process of studying, of learning, of talking, of sharing, I pray, Lord, that it would be a blessing to each of us, and Lord, that it would be a blessing to you. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So the purpose of these times together is that so often when people experience Israel, there's so much information that occurs during the course of their trip that they come back and it's all mush. It's like getting blasted with a fire hydrant, and they come back and they go, what did you see? And they go, everything. And so the goal of these classes is to help present things 1, 2, 3 times, so that way when you're in Israel, you're able to more easily digest what you're getting. Things are more familiar, and then as you come back, your retention is higher. You're able to share more about your trip with more clarity, and it's a blessing, because it should be a trip of a lifetime. And I've just witnessed too many times for people to come back and they go, okay, this happened here. I'm like, no, it didn't happen there, that happened over here, right? And they go, oh, this place was called this. I go, no, it's not called that, it's called this, right? And so I want to be able to help you in this process of making the most out of the time. And so we're going to kind of go on that journey together of hitting the highlights. We won't do everything. And we'll take a break around 4 o'clock. We'll come back together and then we'll wrap up about 10 to 15 minutes before 5 o'clock. We'll meet once a month, and then as we get into 2026, we'll have one of these meetings where it's almost entirely dedicated towards packing, things that are required, things that are recommended, and then things that are preferred. But feel free to ask me any questions as we go along that you're thinking, because I know that for some people to say, wait to ask your question for 4 months, oh, that's terrible, right? And so I even thought maybe we may not answer all the questions, but I just thought, going around the room, what are some questions about Israel that you want to know? And they could be questions about the political situation right now. They could be biblical questions that you have. They could be questions about packing. They could be questions about sites. Anything that you want to know. I'm just going to start making a list, and then we'll see which ones we can knock off, and then we'll get into our conversation tonight, this afternoon, about Herod. All right. So, yeah.
Is English used pretty predominantly over in Israel?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so the first time I traveled to Israel, I asked this question to my Israeli friend, Noah, and he said about 70% of Israel speaks English. It starts getting taught at about 4th grade.
Okay.
And one day, he said, meet me in Akko, which is an Arab city on the coast of the Mediterranean. And he said, I want you to meet me at the Knights Inn. And I said, how do I find the Knights Inn? This was pre-GPS and all that. And it's like Crusader Nights, not like night, right? And so he said, just ask. Everybody knows where it's at. So as I walked through Akko, I said, do you know where the Knight's Inn is at? They go, this is day, not night, day, not night. And then I go, oh, okay. And I go next person, I go, do you know where the Knight's Inn is at? They go, no, it's day, it's not night. And I go, no, like a horse sitting on a jousting, and armor. And they go, I don't know what it is. No cowboy, no Indian. And so, finally, after wandering around Akko for 45 minutes, I find a tourist center and I go, do you guys know where the Knight's Inn is at? And they go, it's right outside. What's wrong with you? and so I come outside, my friend's right there, and I go, no, you said 70% of Israel spoke English. You didn't tell me that all 30% lived in Akko. Yeah, good question. Yeah. I was just in Japan last month doing leadership training. Almost nobody spoke English.
Right.
I met one barista who could hold like a fluent conversation. Israel, much easier. In Israel, it's hard to speak Hebrew because nobody has the patience with me. They're like, I learned your language, just stop doing it, just let's talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're like, hurry up, yalla. You may hear that phrase more than once on the trip. Yalla is an Arabic phrase for hurry up. Yalla, so let's keep going. So, great, other questions? Yeah, Lance.
So what's the weather like?
Oh, the weather. Yeah, great question. The thing about Israel is that even though it's so small, it's only the size of New Jersey, it's pretty diverse in terms of the weather. And so there's kind of 4 pockets that you experience on a trip. So you have the Mediterranean coast, which is going to be like Southern California. You're going to experience that full throttle. And so end of April, early May, you're getting into mid 70s to mid 80s, and maybe if it's unusually warm, it might pop up into the 90s. And then when you go up to the Galilee, this is where you're getting more, what feels a little bit more Midwestern, where you can get a little bit more humidity with it. It might be a little bit cooler, but the humidity is going to put on a little bit more of an edge for you. And then when you come down to the Dead Sea, it's going to be even hotter. It's the lowest place on Earth, but this is going to be like your Arizona dry heat. Like 110 there feels better than 90 in the Galilee. And then when you go up to Jerusalem, you're actually in an elevated wilderness region, a desert region, and so that's going to drop you another like 10 degrees down. So that'll be the one place where in the evening you're going to want like a light jacket or something, because it's going to be maybe in the 60s with a breeze. And so when Lewis and I, my friend Lewis, we traveled to Israel last April, and there was one night we were walking around Jerusalem and I was like, I'm cold. And it was April. And so that's kind of how that goes. And so that's, there's from 50 degrees to 110 degrees. I mean, that's a pretty good swing there in just a pretty small little radius in the same 10-day span. Yeah, but that's, but we're outside of the rainy season, so their winter is a rainy season, so the likelihood of seeing rain is just about nil. And then you'll be grateful for cloudy days, so it's not bad, so it's pretty good. And Israel actually does get some snow in Jerusalem every few years, and then some snow up on Mount Hermon, but you guys won't see that. So unless the most bizarre weather pattern of all time takes place. So yeah, great question. What else?
What about electrical, like to charge your phone and?
Yeah, great question. Yeah.
Phones aren't allowed.
Phones aren't allowed. Yeah. As Ed sits back there on his phone. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
I was.
You were. Yeah, just, sorry. So electrical, so they're running 220.
Okay.
Yeah. So now for cell phones, they switch automatically. I will have links for adapters because their plugins are different. You use what they call a Type H. I think I took mine out of my bag because I switched to a Japanese charger recently, but I try to travel prepared. No, I just have my Japanese charger, sorry. You can get something to step down if you're bringing like a blow dryer or something like that, but pretty much every hotel we stay in will have a blow dryer and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about that. And then things like CPAPs and things like that, those automatically adjust as well. So that's one of the great things about technology is that it can kind of recognize it and change it. Now, the first time I went, I took a fan with me. I didn't know. I plugged that bad boy in and it ran great for about 10 seconds. And then the smell of smoke came and it never ran again. So that was it. So now I have an Israeli fan that I bought in Nazareth and I just travel with that. So, because I'm addicted to my fan.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Others, great question.
What's their food like?
What's their food like? Oh, such a good question. So our breakfast and our dinner are gonna be buffet style meals at the hotels. And so, some people find them to be very reminiscent of like a European type meal where you're going to have, a lot of, fish and vegetables and things like that at breakfast and at dinner. So with Israel being, highly influenced by the ultra-Orthodox Jewish people. They have kosher regulatory dietary things going on. So at breakfast, you have what they call a milk meal. So there's no meat. And then at dinner, you have a meat meal, and so there's no milk. And so the two shall never meet in the hotel. And so as a result, there's things like eggs and so forth. One of the things that throws people off for breakfast is that they have roasted vegetables there that are served cold. And so they look like they should be hot, and then you get them and they're actually cold. And then there's another dish called shashuka, which is like a tomato sauce with onions and peppers that they poach the eggs in. And most people go like, don't know about that. That's actually the thing that most Americans leave Israel loving the most. And that's the thing that they go, I gotta have some shashuka when they get back. In the dinner, lots of meats, steaks, roast beefs, salads, things of that nature. The desserts, not as sweet. They look very decadent, but they're more European and they're not using as much sugar as we typically do. And then lunches will be out at restaurants together, and those are usually like falafel, usually it's a meat or a falafel option. Falafel is ground up chickpeas with some seasoning that's fried. They almost look like hush puppies you remember from Long John Silver's. Taste way different, more savory, and then they go with like a Mediterranean salad, which would be tomato and watermelon with some zest with some lemon in it.
We had those at the GoCon.
Oh, great.
At the
Yeah.
international.
Did Sheila make those?
Yeah,
All the ladies.
All the ladies.
They all got it.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
They were excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a Mediterranean cuisine in Israel with a lot of different influences because Israelis returned back to the land from Spain and Morocco and so forth, and so there's a lot of different influences there. But probably no bacon cheeseburgers.
No pizza?
Pizza without
Every-
cheese.
Pizza with cheese, just no meat. So now, if you stay close, I'll show you some non-kosher places in Israel because they do exist, and I do get excited about them. So, great question though. All right, so food.
No one ever went hungry.
No. Lots of rice, couscous, hummus, baba ganoush, things like this.
Schnitzel.
Schnitzel chicken, yeah. So schnitzel is chicken breast, pound up, fried in batter. It's very nice, like an adult chicken tender. So, yeah, great. Don't ask Louis, because him and I ate unusually well, being just two people who could go to wherever we wanted. So,
Okay.
yeah, don't ask it.
I see I've got high expectations after talking to him.
Yeah, he was eating St. Peter's fish every single night. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I spoiled Louis. So, but when it's just two people, it's different. Yeah. So,
I'm just one people.
you are just one person in a group of many. That's right. Yeah. All right. Any other questions that come to mind? Yeah. Mark.
So how's the safety over there?
Yeah. How's the safety? Great question. Yeah, so safety, that's the number one question, right? So first thing I'd say is that if the planes are flying, it's safe to go. So when the planes aren't flying, that's when it may not be safe to go. It may still be safe to go, but the airlines are extremely cautious when it comes to safety. And so even if things are great, they'll still hold off for a month or two before they return. And so right now, it's great. Everywhere that we'll go is perfectly safe and fine. I'm not gonna take any of you to Gaza. There's nothing to see in Gaza related to the trip. And so Michael Rydelnik, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, he has a program on Moody Radio called Open Line. He took 2 buses last month. My friend Justin Crone, who's a missionary, has a group there right now. My friend Charlie Dyer, who has a program called The Land of the Book, is taking a bus trip next month. And so tours are happening, people are going to Israel, things are good. So despite what you may see in the news, you know, like I was in downtown Chicago this week. I work at Moody Bible Institute. I was there Wednesday night through Friday. Depending on what you watch on the news, you may think that it's incredibly dangerous and that it'd be impossible to survive walking around downtown. I survived.
You talking about Chicago?
Yes, yeah, everything was fine. So, look, here I am. And you can't see through, and you can't see through me, you know, so that's a good sign. So, so it's kind of like that, you know. I always tell people, you know, because we were there in April, and you know, what's happening in Gaza is contained to the Gaza, so it'd kind of be like if something happened in you know, a bad neighborhood in Chicago, you wouldn't necessarily expect it to land on your doorstep here because of the distance and the separation. And so that would be my encouragement there. So if possible, I put my wife and kids on a flight and go there right now without any hesitation. So, and I'm not a psycho. So if it was dangerous, I might do that. Yeah, just for clarity's sake.
What's the time difference?
Oh, 8 hours. Yeah,
8 hours,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's a great question.
And they're ahead of us, right?
They sure are. Yep.
How long's the flight?
Oh, great question. So with Lufthansa, I believe we're stopping in Frankfurt. And so we'll go from Chicago to there. That'll take about 8 hours to get there. We'll have a little bit of a layover, a couple hours, just enough to get off the plane, get a coffee, use the restroom, maybe a bite to eat, and then back on the plane. And then about another 4 hours from Europe into Tel Aviv. So it's usually about 12 hours door to door in terms of flight time from Chicago to Tel Aviv. Yep. The nice thing about international flights is that the size of the planes are bigger, the hospitality is better, they usually have water and snacks in the galley, and so you can get up and go stretch your legs and help yourself to things, stuff like that. So it's not like, you know, when you leave on a Moline flight and you're in those little cans, you know, and like you're like, I can't be on this thing for 14 hours. It's not like that. So, and you know that the Lord's grace is abounding if the seat next to you is open.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you have the favor of God upon your life. So, yeah.
And we'd be leaving together from the Quad Cities?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is that we'll have a bus take us from here to Chicago and then board from O'Hare all together. Yeah. And then for people who wanna go who aren't from the Quad Cities, then they're arranging different travels, and so that way they can meet us there at approximately the same time. Like Anita has a friend coming from Texas.
She's gonna come and stay with me at my
Okay,
house and
but-
then go from here.
Right, but when she leaves, she's taking.
She's still gonna come back here and then go.
I thought she was gonna go to the Philippines.
Yeah, she was, but she's
She's
not.
not going to the
Yeah.
US. Well, we've had people in past trips come from Florida, Wisconsin, different places like that, so, they're able to make those adjustments just fine. So, great question.
I'm excited to see the Holocaust Museum and the Dead Sea. That's not really a question, I'm just telling.
Those are good things to be excited to see, yeah. Great, anything else before we move into the course that comes to mind? Don't be afraid to say it, cause if you're thinking it, someone else probably is too.
How many different hotels will we be moving to and from?
Oh, yeah, great question. On average, we'll have, 5 to 6.
Okay.
So we have an extended stay in the Galilee, an extended stay in Jerusalem, and then from there we'll kind of hop, so.
Okay.
Yeah. We try to get to where it's not a different hotel every night, so you have a couple moments in the trip where you can kind of just unpack, relax, and be there, and you're not, going through the rigmarole. Also, we'll encourage people to do I can't tell you what to do, but to try and encourage you to do your souvenir shopping towards the end of the trip, so that way you have less to pack up, as you go along the way. And then if you have something particular as it relates to souvenirs that you really want to let me know before we go, so that way we make sure that that happens for you. Cause sometimes people get very particular things, and that's like, well, if we're gonna have access to it earlier and not later, I wanna make sure you don't miss out, so.
So,
Yeah.
Unit of currency is shekels, correct?
Yeah, it's NIS, it was really shekel. It's about 3.25 to 3.75 shekels to $1. Yeah, yeah.
And would we need to change that at an exchange here before we leave, or would it be like at the airport in Tel Aviv? Would
great
we even
question.
need to
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, great question.
To
Or
get
just
some,
credit
or what's your experience as far as the time and the place to do an exchange?
Yeah, so my recommendation would be is that, you probably don't need to worry about getting shekels. Usually having a credit card is gonna be advantageous,
Okay.
for purchases at like a coffee shop and things like that. And the reason is that with credit cards, they change at the lowest rate of the day. And so even though the exchange rate isn't changing dramatically during the course of the day, the exchange rate is constantly fluctuating. And so when you run that credit card, it meets it at the lowest currency rate of the day, of that 24-hour period of time. And then when it comes to, when we're going to like, restaurants and stuff like that during lunch, those places all take cash. And they'll usually give you your change in shekels. And so if you get any shekels, it's usually through that process. And so that makes it much easier than having to worry about exchange.
So they would accept American dollars?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if you decide to go on the journey of bartering in the marketplace, which is a really good experience if you're into that kind of thing, then it's better to bargain in dollars than in shekels too. So, yeah. And we'll have a whole conversation on how to barter, of like where they'll start at.
We're
where
good.
we need to start at. Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, and we'll let you know how to know when you've gotten their lowest price. It usually involves one of the openings on your body, so, yeah, that's how they let you know, so, yeah, like I said, they're not bashful people, so, yeah, great question, Bruce. Now, some people just like to have shekels, they like to get currency from other places, and usually the change that you're getting is enough, yeah. So, but like, I don't think I've changed money out for years, I mean, probably 10 years, so.
So they'll take a Visa card from your bank?
Exactly, yep,
Okay.
yep, yeah. I would say like Visa or MasterCard is good if you're using something that's a little bit more distinctive, like diners or something like that.
Yeah.
That would not be great.
Right.
And then also, Capital One, I think still has, no international fees, and so, if you get a credit card with no international fees, that would be probably the best situation. It used to be that you could be asking your credit card company to waive the international fee. That seems to be almost non-existent in terms of service today. But there are cards that do offer no international fees. Like, I'm not sure if any of you use Venmo. Venmo offers an international, zero international fee credit card now. So there are different options like that available, so.
What if you use your debit?
Do you know how your debit and your credit card are the same?
Right, yeah, so, I would just check with your bank about that, cause the one downside of traveling with your debit card is that if for some reason, they get stolen, then they can get into your account more easily. Also, sometimes debit cards get flagged more easily internationally than credit cards do, so, that would be the other thing. Like Chase right now with their credit cards, you don't even have to let them know that you're traveling internationally. So, they've got that stuff pretty well dialed in, so a lot of those things have changed over the years. Great question. Anything else?
And piggybacking on the
Yeah.
currency thing.
Yeah, great.
If we were, so they'll accept American currency,
Yeah,
your typical lunch, I mean, is not gonna, would it be best to have like $50 bills or $20
Oh,
bills
great
or
question.
$100 bills?
yeah, great question. Yeah, so I usually say if you plan for $20 a lunch, you're gonna be ahead, per person.
Okay.
And so lunches, can land anywhere between 12 to 15. Occasionally we have a couple that there's an option for something more expensive. But I would tend to encourage you to use 20s, that's a good, denomination, and then if you come back with some, you're not gonna be saddled with bills that you can't use because nobody accepts 50s or
Alright, well, you
100s.
throw out a $100 bill every time, then you got
Right.
a bazillion
Shekels,
shekels.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing with shekels is that they don't switch to bills until 20 shekels, and so they're all coins at, 1, 2, 5, 10, right? And so a little change purse can be helpful, cause those things will really get, weighing you down there
Okay.
after a while. And it'll feel silly, cause you might have 50 shekels, but that's a lot of falafel
That's a
dough,
lot of
too.
food.
So you don't wanna just be throwing it away,
That's a whole different
Now,
conversation.
their change is, Aragots. And so that is, when we get there, we'll get it, I'll show you the difference between a shekel and, Aragot. That stuff, you pretty much give that to to somebody for a souvenir, and be like,
No.
I got you some Israeli currency, that's,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be fun. But that's like giving someone a penny as a gift, so, yeah. It goes a long way.
Yeah, Eric?
Yeah. Great. Any more questions? These are great.
I'm sorry to keep
No,
on
you're
the
great, yeah.
going the same way. Are they into tipping or is it expected like here in the
Oh,
United States
yeah.
or?
Yeah, great question. So what we do is that we work the tips into the cost of the trip.
Okay.
So that way you don't have to tip and worry about that dynamic.
Alright.
Now David, the tour guide, will say that if for some reason you're somewhere and you experience something that is just so out of this world that you just feel compelled to give somebody something, then feel free to do that. But on the whole, at the lunches, at the hotels, the bus driver, the tour guide, all of those tips are already factored into the cost of the trip. You don't have to worry about any of it.
Okay.
So, now if you go out on your own, restaurant tipping in Israel is totally different than it is here. A great tip in Israel would be 10%, but even that is not really a part, it's not really expected like it is here. Where here, if you don't tip at least 20%, someone might flip a table on you.
Alright.
There, it's not the case, so,
Okay.
yeah,
Alright, no, thanks.
yeah.
Are we going to really touristy places, or
Oh,
are
yeah.
they gonna be?
Yeah, great question. So, I really believe that we're gonna be one of the groups that come back at a time where we're gonna have a lot of sites to ourselves. It was like that in 22 when we went after COVID, and it was fantastic. By 23, we were already starting to see some of that uptick of traffic, but it was still nothing compared to 2019. And so when you say, is it touristy? If there will be tourists where we go. Is it touristy in the sense of is it Disneyland? It's not like that kind of touristy, right? And so the kind of places that we're gonna be spending a lot of our time are gonna be what are technically national parks for Israel, because they're biblical archaeological sites. And so as a result, there'll be other buses there with people there, but they're on the same kind of pilgrim journey that you are on. And then depending on the day of the week, if, going to Herod Spring, we're gonna see some Israeli families there who are having holiday and stuff like that, cause that's a popular site for the weekend, stuff like that. And then we're gonna go, in Jerusalem, it's gonna be, everything is a site in Jerusalem, like it's like, that's a site, and that's a site, and that's a site, and that's a site, and that's a
Jesus
site.
lived here and Jesus lived there.
Well, we won't do those kind of sites, yeah, so we don't do, there's kind of this system of A sites, B sites, and C sites. So an A site is we know that this happened right here. A B site is that if we threw a stone, we'd be able to hit it. It's somewhere in this proximity. And a C site is, this is absolutely not it, but somebody put a marker here, and so it's tradition, like the Samaritan's Inn. Well, that's a parable, so not it, right? Simon the Tanner's house is a building built in the 1800s. Not it, right? So those will all be C sites. Now, where Elijah calls down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel, well, based on the Kishon Brook that we can see from where we're at on Mount Carmel, it's like, well, Mount Carmel's big, but we're also in proximity to where the prophets got slayed, so this is probably a B site. We can, we can't say that the fire hit here, but we're in the right area, And then an A site would be like the southern steps of the Temple Mount, Hezekiah's tunnel. We know that we're there. And then there's some places that are a little bit debated, like Peter's house and Caesarea. That would be, or not Caesarea, I'm sorry, in Capernaum. There's good evidence for it to be an A site, and even if that's definitely not Peter's house, well, we're in Capernaum, so we know we're at least at a B site, yeah. So, there are, usually at the top of the Mount of Olives, there are gonna be some people, there's some poor Arab people there who are gonna be trying to sell you some things that are not worth anything. And it's one of two places that we'll have a conversation with you about make sure that your wallet's in your front pocket, and you're conscious of your surrounding. Even like a Moody student had their Bible stolen there on the top of Mount Olives. What a great thing to have stolen, right? Yeah, like clearly you needed it more than I did, okay? Yeah, I'll get another one. And so, that's something to be aware of. And then outside the Garden Tomb is another spot where there'll be some people selling things, and we'll never encourage you to buy anything necessarily, but that'll feel a little bit like, and then once we get past it and we're looking at the panorama over Jerusalem, then it's all worth it, but yeah.
Jared,
Great question.
did you talk about how everyone can hear with the earbuds when you're on that tour of things?
I did not talk about it, but that's a great point, yeah, so, we do have what's called a whisper system, and so David, the tour guide, and myself will have a microphone, and then all of you will have listening packs with a headphone set. And so that way, it doesn't have to be like, let's all crowd in and try to like strain to hear, but you'll just be able to stand and hear what we're saying, even though there's some distance apart, and so that makes a world of difference. It's a great invention. There was a time in traveling to Israel where you just had to all cram in, the guide had to project, and then there was a time after that where the guide had a boom box that would play just loud, so then everybody's saying it, and it's all on a PA system that has a canceling effect, and now it's right in the ear. So thanks for bringing that up, Anita. Yeah.
Do our American phones, like on American plans, work on their system to call back to American internet?
Yeah.
Do you need a SIM card or something like that?
Great question. So you'll have options. So there's a lot of Wi-Fi in Israel. There's even Wi-Fi on the bus. And so if you're content having access to something like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger for your phone calls, and you're not immediately trying to be attentive to something, then usually there's enough Wi-Fi to get you by. If you're going, you know what, I'd like a little bit more than that, then something like a digital SIM card can be really great. So there's a company called, or an app, I guess is what you should call it, called Saley. And you can just on your phone, download the Saley app, you pay like $20, and then you get gigabytes, and you can use that as a service on your phone without having to mess with the SIM card or anything. So for me, I do have a SIM card that I purchase and I recharge before I go, but that's because I go frequently, and so I have an Israeli number and all of that. But, so it kind of depends on what you feel comfortable with, your level of need. And then also depending on what your mobile service provider is, some service providers have great international options where you can just use that while you're there. Like Verizon will usually give away a number of free days a year, and so if that's the only time you're using it, could be great. I think like Lewis, he had Mint Mobile, and so he had a real cheap option he could use for his international calling, and so those are kind of the kind of the tiers I would say, is that, hey, if some Wi-Fi most of the day will get you by at the hotel and the bus, that's probably great. I mean, the whole city of Tel Aviv has Wi-Fi, so it's like, it's pretty serious there. And then two, if that's not enough, then a digital SIM card is a great new option. When I was in Japan last month, that's what I used. It was super easy. And then 3 would be an international plan, and then 4 would be, you know, purchasing a SIM card when you're there. So that would be kind of how I would make my recommendations. So is that good? Any clarifying questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yep. So
Didn't Verizon charge us $10?
How many people are already signed up? How much room is left?
From Edgewood right now, we have 17 going with another 11 people that we're looking at, who are looking at going and having conversations with, and then possibly more. I mean, you know, we're at an interesting time period where I think people are watching things closely on the ground and making their decision based on what Fox News tells them to do. And I completely understand. So.
Is there a minimum number or you would cancel?
We're already, you know, so for the tour company, they have to have a minimum of 15 to go.
Okay.
And so, so we have that, yeah, that's a good question, so.
So is there a maximum too?
Yeah, you know, so I don't wanna go more than 1 tour bus. I wanna leave a few seats open on the bus just cause it's a little, like the back row is a bench seat of 4 seats. And that's not great to fill up all 4, right? So 2 back there, and then the guide and myself need some space for our schlepping of stuff, you know, and so really 47 is kind of on the max end, for the trip. And so if you've got people that you wanna throw on this bus with us, you know, bring them on.
Yeah. Just bottle of water.
Oh, bottle of water, great, yeah. Ed's not asking me to get him one, just for clarity's sake. So, you know, hydration is important when you're in the Middle East. And so our bus driver, Bulos, has, all buses have this really, but there's a built-in cooler in the dashboard of the bus. And so he keeps that stock full of water. And so, it's $1 a bottle, and what generally happens is people go, I'm not paying $1 for a bottle of water. And I go, you don't have to pay $1. And then they'll go, I'm just gonna refill this bottle of water. And then on one day, on one particular hike, they get back on the bus and they go, I'm paying $1 for that bottle of water. Right? So, and Bulos is great. You know, if you throw in a 20, he'll be like, just take as much water as you want. You know, I mean, he's way more laid back than a lot of bus drivers are about it, but the water's gonna be there. So you don't have to worry about running out of water or anything like that. Water is drinkable in most of the country. Usually it's marked or identified if it's not for some reason. Israel's a very developed country. I mean, it's, you know, it's a Western country in the Middle East that's what Israel is, so. It's a good question, thanks Ed, yeah.
So took a little bit longer.
I wanna keep my friendship with Bulos, well,
Yeah, you know, Bulos loves Ed. Yeah, he said he's a good pastor. That's a good pastor. Some not good. That one, that's good. That's good. That was. Bulos is an Arab Christian, so his English not in the 70% category. So we you know we get there. But that was one thing he said very well in English. So Ed's a good pastor. So.
So how physical is it? A lot of walking and?
Oh, great question, yeah. So I tell people if you can walk 1 mile and do 2 flights of stairs, you're gonna be able to do over 80% of the trip. And so from an exertion standpoint, that's like a good threshold. I've only ever had one person I've taken on a trip that I made prove to me that they could do it before I took their registration. And they didn't walk again after that day, and that was a mistake on my part. So, and you know, as we go, we'll get reminder emails of like getting your steps in, you know, and like if you have a treadmill, you know, work on getting a little bit of an incline on there because there is some incline walking. But I will say this: most of Israel in the national parks are way more paved and accessible than they ever have been. There's way more hand railings than there ever have been. Megiddo used to feel like just a trek on this dirt path, and now it's all nice and paved and stuff like that. So it's all a lot easier. I will say that, you know, you've heard the expression, I used to walk uphill both ways to school in the snow, right? The one city where I believe somebody if they told me that is Jerusalem. So it feels like you're always walking uphill no matter where you go in that city. It's because there's more valleys than you would realize. And so, you know, you might have a little bit of a calf burn, but it's not like you're not hiking an Appalachian Trail or doing the Rockies or anything, you know, crazy. So, and we had, I mean, how old is Shirley? She's 82. You know, Shirley was 82, and we had her on an archaeological dig, sitting on a bucket underground, having a great time. You know, so just wishing that she had her gardening gloves. That's the only thing that she was missing. So, yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's kind of as close to a round percentage you can give us. How much time do you think we'll actually spend on a bus?
Great question. So there's only one day where we have a longer stretch of time on the bus, and that's when we're going from the north to the south. And so that's usually about 4 hours that day on the bus. Otherwise, most of the time, because Israel's so small, we're spending maybe 30 minutes or so in between sites or less getting places on the bus.
All right.
When we go up to the Golan Heights, that's a little bit longer to get up there, that's an hour, but then in between sites, it's like 5 minutes. And so, so that's, you know, it's real quick.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's not like, so like when we, like in Greece and Turkey, you really only get 1, maybe 2 sites a day because they're so spread apart, where like in Israel, we'll be getting 3, 4, 5, 6 sites in a day. You know, like on the day of the Galilee, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different things we'll do that day, because it's all right there. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it varies a little bit day to day, just depending on where we're at, but really the only long stretch is that day that we're kind of going trekking through the country. So, yeah, good question, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if I remember it right, but it seems like there were some places that we had to have our shoulders covered and our knees covered.
Oh, great, yeah.
Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Timothy taught us to be modest, and they take it seriously, those Catholics and Arabs. So, some sites that we go to will be Catholic sites, and then some sites that we go to are technically Arab sites. So like going on top of the Temple Mount, that's an Arab site. And so you gotta be covered all the way down, including your ankles, and then you gotta have your shoulders covered. At Catholic sites, you gotta have your knees covered, and you gotta have your shoulders covered. And so what we recommend is for days like that, nice light hiking pants like these. are great. And then for women, we recommend getting, these lightweight breathable shawls that you can just kind of drape over your shoulders or wrap around your waist. And so those that does the job, covers the shoulders, covers the knees, but it's not heavy and not breathable that, then it's a burden. And so we'll have a sheet that will have links and recommendations on that. And when we do the packing day, I have my wife come in and she brings all of her Israeli packing gear that she brings with to kind of show like this is what she recommends using, so.
How about health insurance or?
Oh, great question, yeah. So one of the things that is required is medical travel insurance. And so after you register, once we get to a certain point in like the registration closing, then Mission Valley Travel sends out an email with a insurance quote. And one of the reasons why we can't work in insurance into the cost of the trip is because it's so varied based on individual. And so, so they'll provide you with a quote from the lines. It's a good company, it's reliable, we've had people who needed to use it and they got their money, and that's a good thing. Now, if your credit card provides medical insurance, or your own health insurance provides it, or you have another travel company that you like to use, because sometimes people buy one for the whole year if they're traveling other places, all of that is great. They'll just ask for the coverage number on it. For myself, for Ed and Sheila, in our past trips, I think we just took the quote from the lines and used that, and that's an all-encompassing one that's gonna cover medical and travel and all of those pieces as well. But I will tell you, having experienced the medical system in Israel, it is dirt cheap. You show up even for the ER and you just pay like 100 shekels and then you just go get treated. And so, cause it is,
Yeah, if you want your dental taken care of too, there, it's pretty.
yeah, if you want, yeah, come for the tourist, stay for the bridge. So, yeah, okay. All right, any other questions? Great questions. All right, let's get into Herod the Great. Actually, it's 3:58. You guys need a short break before we get into Herod the Great? No? Someone tell me what you need, because I'll just keep talking.
Keep going.
Okay, great. All right, so one of the main figures in the New Testament is Herod the Great, whose name usually comes up around Christmas time as the role that he plays in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, when we're traveling around Israel, there's multiple sites that one of the reasons why there's so much to look at those sites is because of the work that Herod the Great did building there. And so while the guy was a complete and total psycho, he did have some really good architects working for them, and they were motivated to do a good job. Because if you're willing to kill your brother and your sons and your wife, you're probably willing to kill your architect as well. And so while this is not a wholesale endorsement of Herod, it is a way for us to go through and look at the sites that relate particularly closely to Herod the Great and why there's something there to look at. And so all of you have the handouts. None of the handouts have anything to necessarily fill in on. There is a little section on the side for notes if I say something that is not in the notes that you find particularly interesting that you want to write down, or if you want to ask a question. So Herod the Great. So Herod is considered the king of Israel, or the king of Judea, and he reigns from about 37 to 4 BC. Now, the interesting thing about Herod the Great is that he technically wasn't Jewish in his ancestry. His ancestry is actually Idumean. Idumean is the Greek word for Edomite. Perhaps you remember the Edomites, the enemies of Israel. They were to the east of the Dead Sea. And what had happened during the time period before the Romans were in charge of Israel is that the Maccabeans, or the Hasmoneans, the Jewish people who were ruling between the Greeks and the Romans during this nice little time period, they went and they conquered the Idumeans. And so some of them ended up being reestablished in southern Israel. And what happens is that they have to start following Judaism. They have to start being Jewish. And so Herod the Great's father was very good politically, and he got in with the Jewish ruling group, the Hasmoneans. And as a result, it gave some really good political access points for his son, Herod. And then Herod was very good navigating the Roman world when the Romans took over, and became good friends with Mark Antony. And so as Mark Antony, he was able to go to him and say, hey, put me in charge of running Israel, and I will make sure that all of the Jews are in line for you. And at that time, there was a group from Persia that was trying to take over Israel called the Parthians. And so they said, you know what, Herod, you go be in charge. And so he came back to Israel with a ticket to go, hey, I'm your king. And so that introduces this very interesting character who's not Jewish, but is the king of the Jews. But his ancestry is the enemies of Israel. Now, if you're wondering where his name came from, Herod the Great, take a guess as to where, take a guess as to where that name came from.
Maybe reckons up.
Yeah, from himself. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's like a surefire sign, you know. Like if someone calls himself the Great, then that's it. So maybe when we can get together in December, we can talk about Hanukkah, because as you get into the story of Hanukkah, that's where we get into where the Maccabees or the Hasmoneans came from. Get into some of the history that happens between the close of the Old Testament and the opening of the New Testament, because so much is happening during that time period. Now, Herod the Great, not really big into, faithfulness, and so has a lot of wives, trying to create political alliances through marriage, trying to gain some favor with people. One of those, Miriam, she is the granddaughter of Hyrcanus, the Hasmonean ruler, the Jewish ruler. Now, once the Jews are no longer in charge, and he doesn't need that, he kills her. She's dead, okay? And both of the sons that he had with her, kills them too. And what is the old saying? It's better to be Herod's pig than Herod's son. So then he marries another Miriam because he liked the name so much, and this is daughter of Simon the high priest. And so by marrying the daughter of the high priest, he's hoping that the Jewish people will start to respect him and that he'll gain some favor from them. And so his sons are partially Jewish. But at this point in time, the high priest is not somebody who really holds the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, in high esteem. It's the Sadducees. The Sadducees paid off the position of high priest, and they only held to the Torah. They didn't hold to the resurrection. And so a lot of Jewish people didn't even respect the high priest, let alone respect Herod the Great for marrying the daughter of the high priest. So that wasn't as effective as he thought it would be. So he kills the two sons of Miriam, and then his third son. If you look on your sheet there, you have this little family tree at the bottom. All right? And Arisbalus on the far left of the family tree, that's the third son that he kills. And he has him strangled for fear of a political overthrow. Did I mention the guy was crazy? So, now one thing that he did do with the Jewish population that they really liked, he expanded the Temple Mount. He improved the Second Temple, which had been there for 500 years. He built a fantastic building over the cave of Machpelah where Abraham had buried Sarah. He built a fabulous building at the Oaks of Mamre where the Abrahamic covenant was made in Hebron. So he was doing some things that they very much liked. And he increased trade dramatically, where most of the Roman Empire was eating fish from the Sea of Galilee. So people who were exporting fish from the Sea of Galilee, they were making more money than they'd ever seen because of Herod. So, he built 15 palaces, fortresses throughout Israel. We won't see all of them, but we'll see a number of them. And all of them had swimming pools. This man loved luxury. He loved it so much. He would have apples imported from Rome so that way he could have them at all of his palaces, some of which he never even went to. He would have palaces built, fully stocked, like we'll see in a moment, and never even went there. Everything he'd ever want if he did go there, and didn't go there. So, have you ever, maybe you haven't, but perhaps you have, The Lord of the Beans, the VeggieTales movie, where they talk about the life of ease? This is Herod the Great. He got addicted to the life of ease. Okay? So Osa Mamre, the cave of Machpelah, mentioned that. The temple, he expanded, mentioned that. Herod died in Jericho. It seems that he, from records, he had gangrene in his intestines, had a terrible death. He even tried to kill himself by stabbing himself, but didn't do so great. And then, on top of it, he knew that nobody cared if he died, like nobody was going to be mourning him. And so he had ordered his soldiers to kill some of the priests in Jerusalem so that way there would be mourning that would take place at his death, even though it wasn't for him. And then Herod was buried at the Herodium, which we'll see more of in a moment. And so we found fragments of a sarcophagus. We haven't found the actual body of Herod, but we have good evidence for where that would have been. Okay. Here's a quick peek at the family tree here. One of the confusing things about reading through the New Testament is that there's multiple Herods mentioned, and so sometimes it's hard to keep them straight, right? So Herod is Herod the Great, the one who's present when Jesus is born. This is the one that the Magi's come to asking for the King of the Jews, and this is the one who orders for all of the Jewish boys in Bethlehem, 2 years old and younger, to be murdered. And there's even a spot in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem that has a burial spot that they've discovered, a mass grave of children's bones, seemingly to indicate evidence of that event happening historically, including the biblical account. And so when you see the fact that he's willing to kill his wife and 3 sons, then is it a stretch that he had kids in Bethlehem killed? Not a stretch. Now, especially when people from Persia, the Magi, are showing up saying we want to worship the King of the Jews, and he's going, I'm sorry, what? In Bethlehem? Wait, when did you see the star? How old? Okay, I can fix that problem. Philip is in the New Testament. Philip is overseeing what is the Golan Heights today, and so that area north of the Sea of Galilee going towards Syria and Lebanon, and then what would be like modern day Jordan kind of jetting over, kind of an L piece. And then Herod Antiochus, this is when I oversee the Galilee. This is the big problem with John the Baptist and all that. Okay, so Herod's a real problem. Antiochus. And then Herod Agrippa the First, we'll talk about him in a moment. He's a big dummy, just like, I mean, when you talk about somebody who was a French fry short of a Happy Meal, this guy's an underachiever. I mean, nepotism really helped him in life. And then Herod Agrippa II, Paul gives testimony before him in the book of Acts, okay? So there's a quick glance at Herod's family tree. Archelaus, he oversaw Judea and Samaria, but died young at like 6 AD is when he died, and so he doesn't factor much into the picture of the New Testament world that Jesus is ministering in. Okay, so let's go to Masada. Okay, so you'll go to Masada. This is a plateau in the wilderness near the Dead Sea. It's less than 1,000 feet from the Dead Sea. Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. It's 1,400 feet below sea level. But then when you're on the top of Mount Masada, you're going to be about 190 feet above sea level, right? So this is a high plateau. Herod had built a palace here. jettisoning out the side of the mountain, this three-tier palace going down, and then a whole complex up top of facilities, even built a synagogue right here, built another palace for guests on the other side, built a system of cisterns throughout the mountainside, inside the mountain, that would trap and gather water from the surrounding mountains that would come and fill up there. You'll have the opportunity to ride a cable car up there. I'm not gonna make any of you walk up there, okay?
Thank
All right.
you.
You're welcome. So there, if you want to on your own someday go there, that's great. So, some scholars believe that Gomorrah was at the base, near the base of this area, and then Sodom would have been a little bit further south, a few miles. One of the things that people don't realize about the Dead Sea region is that prior to Sodom and Gomorrah in the book of Genesis, it's described as being like the Garden of Eden, that it was a green and flourishing place, and that following the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, it became what it is today. And so some people wonder, well, why is the Dead Sea as salty as it is? And I would confess that it's because of this altering place of God raining sulfur and fire down into this area that transformed the topography of it. So before, it says, well watered everywhere like the garden of the Lord, referring to the Garden of Eden. And then after Sodom and Gomorrah, all the valley and what grew on the ground was all destroyed. So the Dead Sea, you're going to see this multiple times in the Bible as the Salt Sea, the Eastern Sea. And then we actually have a picture in Ezekiel 47 that eventually the Dead Sea will no longer be dead, but will be restored and will be fresh water again. So it's good that you're going now and floating, because everybody's like, well, I'll just get there, you know, in the millennium. And I'm like, yeah, but you won't be able to float in the sea. So now if you have a resurrected body, you might be able to walk on it like Jesus, I don't know, but you won't be able to float like a bobber, okay? And floating in the Dead Sea is as easy as it looks. You'll walk out, you wade out to about waist deep, you kind of sit down, your feet will pop up, and it'll be fantastic.
It's awesome.
Super easy. There is some indication that the inhabitants of the Dead Sea fortress of Masada goes back even further than the Maccabees or the Hasmoneans. And the reason is that after David flees Saul at En-Gedi, it says that he goes to the stronghold or the fortress. And En-Gedi is just a stone's throw north of the Dead Sea. And so when you're out in the Dead Sea region, you're like, where do we go to a fortress? This natural plateau would make sense that this has actually probably been a place that they've used for millenniums as a holdout. And the reason being is that because it was near the southern part of the Dead Sea, is that enemies of Israel would be able to cross by land there, like the Edomites. And so this would be a high enough place to be able to have a watchtower to watch out for invading armies. And that's why the Maccabees had it there. That's why Herod the Great built his palace there, was as a watch out place. And so it would make sense that perhaps even all the way back to David's time, that he was using it as a fortress as well. Now, the Jewish zealots take control of it during 66 AD. There's something that is very important for the history of Israel, and that's the Jewish revolt from about 66 AD to 73 AD. So at this time, Jewish people had decided to throw off the bondage of Rome, or at least attempt to. And their last stand was made here at Masada. And the Romans were very dedicated to make sure that the Jewish people were not successful in their revolt. And so this is what leads to the most significant event here. You see this piece right here, that slope right there? That's a siege ramp that the Romans built. So what happened was that the zealots went and took over Masada. Now keep in mind that, you know, this is 70 years approximately after Herod the Great's died. There's very minimal presence there. So handful of servants, it's not well fortitude, it's still well supplied, and they're able to successfully take it over by going up the snake path and killing the people who are there. And then they're able to live there comfortably, and they think that they're gonna be able to live there for as long as they want, and the Romans will never be able to do anything about it. But then the Romans showed up. About 8,000 Roman soldiers showed up, and when you're there, you're still gonna be able to see the encampments from the Romans that are there. There's still like the walls, the catapult, the balls are all still there to see from the result of this battle. And so 8,000 soldiers show up, but what they brought with them was 6,000 Jewish slaves. And so what they did is they put these Jewish slaves to work building that siege ramp. And why did they do that? Because they knew they would not have to worry about the zealots firing arrows down at their Jewish brothers and sisters working to build that siege ramp. And so the zealots had to watch as the Romans built this ramp and eventually make their way up it, and then they burned the outer wall. And in the night, Romans, either because they were tired or they wanted to give the psychological edge, decided to wait till morning to go in and attack. And so that night, something that the Romans definitely didn't expect to have happen, was that the leader of the Zealots gave an impassioned plea to not allow the Romans the satisfaction of taking them in battle. He said, listen, if we fight, we're gonna lose. There was less than 1,000 Jewish people there, fighting 8,000 Roman soldiers. They were going to lose. He said, we're not gonna see our women raped, we're not gonna see our children sold into slavery. That's not going to happen. We should just kill ourselves. And so with suicide being one of the worst sins from the Torah perspective, men went home and killed their wives and children, leaving 10 men left who casted lots, and then one man killed everyone else, and then only one committed suicide. And they've actually found the lots from that night. Now, how do we know what happened? There was 2 women and 5 children who hid in an underground cavern, and Josephus, the Roman Jewish historian, interviewed them, and they detailed the events of what happened that night. And so when the Romans broke in the next morning, expecting a fight or a surrender, they found everyone slaughtered. And that was the end of the Jewish revolt. And one of the things that had occurred for a number of decades, no longer does, is that Israel has a handful of places where they'll do a swearing-in ceremony for the Israeli Defense Force, for their army, and this was one of the sites. Because one of the things that they've said is not only for the Holocaust to never happen again, they've also said, and Masada will never happen again. Herodian. Okay, Herodian. This is very close to Jerusalem in Bethlehem. It's a large cone-shaped mound with this flat top that would have had a more sophisticated facility built on top in its day. And right now, since this photo's been taken, there's actually been a lot of money being put into the Herodium as a site, and they're starting to build a partial tower system on the top to give you a sense of what it would have looked like in the day and age when it's fully operational. Herodium was the most important spot, one of the most important spots to Herod. Being so close to Bethlehem and being close to Jerusalem, sitting up high, it gives us a great view into these 2 areas, being able to see where the shepherd's field was. And there was not a lot happening, but there was a small city that Herod had built near the base of the palace. And so basically, what happened was Herod dug out this whole inside and then created a fortress palace inside of this hill. Mm-hmm. And so he brought some dirt up and then built on top and then dug it out inside. And so we'll be able to walk up it, through it, and down out it. And it's quite impressive. the reason why he wanted a fortress here, remember how I mentioned that he had, the Romans' permission to fight the Parthians, the people from Persia? Well, initially, it looked like he was gonna lose that. He was in a battle, him and his men were retreating in chariots, and his mother was with him, and the chariot tipped, and he thought that when the chariot tipped and his mother fell out, that she'd hit her head and died. And he was so overwhelmed with the Parthians charging him, and he was such a mama's boy that with his mama dying, he was going to kill himself. So he was getting ready to slit his throat right there, and then the soldiers who were with him were like, no, she's alive, she's just unconscious, don't kill yourself, like you have to lead us, you have to be ready to fight. And when he realized that she wasn't dead and they were right, he stopped what he was doing, he said, let's go. And they fought the Parthians and they won the battle right there. And he said, this is where we experience deliverance, and so this is going to be my fortress palace. And so that's what led to him creating this palace at that location there.
Was he a strategic, soldier?
He didn't have traditional soldier experience like that. Most of his experience was more kind of political cunningness, persuasive. That would be more of his skill set, yeah, to be able to make a hearing with people. And one of the things, because of growing up in the home that he grew up in with a father who was connected to the Jewish leaders, but then also having his connections to the Roman world, like Mark Antony and all that, he was able to convince the Romans that he was an expert who understood both worlds, that he was somebody who was truly qualified to stand in the gap. And then also, like most political leaders, he was unusually tall for his size, and people who are unusually tall tend to get more reverence in society. And so he, had a physically emboldening presence for his size, even though he's kind of a coward. Some people think this is a reference point to Matthew 21:21, where Jesus talks about faith will move mountains. Because it was once thought that this entire facility was created there. What's more likely is that the hillside was already there, just some dirt was moved in. And so you'll hear that commonly referenced. I don't think it carries as much archaeological evidence or weight as some people would make it seem, that there was nothing there and then a giant cone mountain. If any of you have ever tried to build a sandcastle, you know it wouldn't withstand very well, right? So, like, moving that cone without anything to reinforce it and support it would make it hard to stand. This is Josephus' account of Herod's burial. Archelaus admitted nothing of magnificence, but brought out all the royal ornaments to augment the pomp of the deceased. There was a bier of all gold, embroidered with precious stones, and a purple bed of various texture, with the dead body upon it covered with purple, and a diadem was put upon his head, and a crown of gold above it, and a scepter in his right hand. And near to the bier were Herod's sons and a multitude of his kindred, next to which came his guards and the regiment of Thracians, and the Germans also, and the Gauls, and all accounted as if they were going to war. But the rest of the army went armed and following their captains and officers in a regular manner, after whom 500 of his domestic servants and free men followed, with sweet spices in their hands, and the body was carried to Herodium, where he had given order to be buried. And so that was the processional scene from Jericho to the Herodium. Now, let's move on to the temple. So, keeping in mind that the original temple was destroyed by the Babylonians at their time of captivity, and then following the return from exile, they were able to rebuild the second temple. But even those who were old enough to remember the first temple remember that it did not stand with the same amount of size and prominence as the original temple. And so then here comes Herod the Great, who, trying to make a good impression on the Jewish people and with the wealth of Rome, set about building a temple that would be of the same grandeur that the original one had been, and perhaps even greater, if at all possible. When we do our section on Jerusalem, I'll spend a little bit more time walking through the tabernacle and what that was and how that translated into the temple, and then to the way that the Temple Mount has changed over the centuries, because as we all know, since 70 AD, there's no temple there, but instead what we have on top is the Alyaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. And so how did that come to be? The political shortfall. But what Herod did do for them is that he was able to bring back the amount of gold that they had. They were able to bring about more merchants, more space for them to be able to sell animals and so forth. Because keep in mind that there's 3 Jewish holidays where they're commanded to take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and that's Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles, right? So 3 feasts that they're supposed to travel to. Now, if you've traveled with a kid, you know how challenging that is, right? Now imagine if you have to travel with your sacrifice too, right? So imagine you got to schlep to Jerusalem, and not just from within Israel, but because Jews are spread all over the diaspora at this point, you have to travel across the Roman world with your wife and kids and your goat or your pigeons, you know, to make your sacrifice. Nobody wants to do that, right? And so what they want is that they want their animals ready for them to purchase at the temple complex, right? And so what Herod's expansion does is he allows it much easier for merchants to be able to set up these areas and stables for people to buy their animals in large and you know, large amounts right here. So Caesarea Maritima. This is personally one of my favorite sites. So I mentioned a moment ago that Herod the Great's key political ally was Mark Antony. Does anybody remember what happened to Mark Antony?
He's left with Cleopatra.
That's true. Well, you know, that wasn't one of the things I was going to hit on today, but that is true. Mark Antony was a part of leading an army during a civil war with Octavian. And so Mark Antony and Octavian were fighting for who would be in control of the Roman Empire. And Mark Antony lost. And Octavian became known as
Caesar.
Yeah, Caesar Augustus, right? And so now all of a sudden, Herod has kind of a problem. His buddy, dead. No good. So what he does is he plays this ultimate power move. He tells Augustus, he said, you think that I'm going to kowtow to you? If Mark Antony was still alive, I would follow him. He says that to his face. He says, but he's not. And so I will follow you. So he goes back and he takes this very small town called Stratton's Tower, which was made by the Phoenicians. I mean, just like this tiny little place, right along the Mediterranean Sea. And he turns it into a gigantic city, and he names it Caesarea, after Caesar Augustus. And so we refer to it as Caesarea Maritima because it's Caesarea by the sea. And what he does here is no small feat. So because it's built on the Mediterranean Sea, it's lacking something that you would want your city to have, which is
Ports.
well, ports, yeah, so we'll get to the port. The port's very important. But if you're, anywhere that you'd want, if you were gonna build something, you'd want water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want fresh water. And so he builds 2 gigantic aqueducts, one above ground, one below ground, to pull water runoff from Mount Carmel 20 plus miles away into the city to create fresh water source that would be reliable and dependent. And that means, that you can see how huge this thing is as that car can drive under the arches, right? And then this all has to be covered because you can't, have birds pooping in it and contaminating water upstream, right? And you have to have it guarded so that way nobody can poison your water upstream coming into your city, right? And so then he goes about building this gigantic, theater. So this theater here, prior to the 1950s, was completely covered in sand. The sand dunes were so bad in Israel that this whole region was one gigantic sand dune from the seaside, and then it was swamp from water being trapped in the inlands area. And there was, after Israel became a state in 1948, a plane was flying over top of it and saw this divot in the sand dunes and went, there's a structure down there. And they went and they started digging the sand out, and that's what they found. Pretty cool, right? Whole theater. Now, so in addition to the water, he also built a harbor. I don't know if I have a good picture of the harbor today, but you have a picture of the harbor on your handout there. So, one of the things that's unique about the Mediterranean coast of Israel is that it's a very smooth coastline. There's not really spots that make for a natural harbor very well. The one area where it does is in Jaffa, and that's one of the indicators we have that the Jaffa today is the same Jaffa where Jonah would have boarded the ship to Tarshish, because otherwise you had to go all the way up to Tyre in what would be modern day Lebanon for another port. And so what Herod did was he said, I'm going to build a harbor that's worthy of the name Caesar on it. And so what he did is he came up with this methodology of creating these rafts with these cylinders filled with volcanic rock, and he would fill them up and he would sink them, and once they were sunk from how heavy they were, the water would mix with them, turning them into concrete. And so he found a system of creating a 40-acre harbor, sinking these concrete pillars all along the way, and when he did that, he created the world's largest harbor at Caesarea. I mean, isn't that cool? It's pretty wild, right? Yeah.
I wanna see it.
That's the attitude I like, Ed. Yeah.
Let's go.
And so now he creates the world's largest harbor. And so then all of the import-export is happening right there. And so when we think about when the Apostle Paul comes back from his missionary journey, he comes to Caesarea, right? When he's imprisoned before he gets shipped to Rome, he's in Caesarea, right? And so a good amount of the book of Acts happens, or key events in the book of Acts happens right here in Caesarea. From Herod Agrippa dying, to Philip the evangelist retiring and his daughters being there, to Paul's multiple defenses before the before Felix and Festus and Agrippa II, right? All of those things happen right here, all because Herod the Great built this harbor and wanted to do something to honor Caesar Augustus to continue to earn his favor there. Now, he did have a palace here, and remember, what did he have at every palace? A pool. And so what did he do? He built a pool jettisoning out into the Mediterranean Sea. That's bougie. Pretty excessive.
How old was he? I mean, how did he do all of this? Did he do it all at once?
Slave?
or-
Well, yeah, so good question. So, if we go back to the first page, kind of gives the dates for the windows of time that he's doing a lot of the building. So the first phase of building is the first 7 years he builds Masada. So that's like his panic room that he builds first, right? If anything bad happens, get out to the wilderness. Phase 2, after his victory, he's building the Herodian, right? This is my palace fortress. Phase 3, I'm gonna please the Jews, and so he expands the temple. And that expansion project actually goes past his lifetime. That takes longer than his life. But the Jews continue to do it because they got Roman money to pay for it. And then the final one, after Caesar Augustus comes into power, then he does something to please him. And so that's kind of the four phases there. Great question. There's always this temptation that I have, because like I want to tell you everything right now, but I also want to tell you some things while we're there, you know, so there's a little push and pull that I feel internally. But let me pull up one more picture for you here. Ed, do you have Wi-Fi down here?
Yes.
Yes.
Edge Tech, Edge Guest.
Jesus saves.
And
Capital.
Guest and then Jesus,
That's a password.
capital S saves.
Is there anything else capital besides S?
Every J and S are capitalized.
Oh, yeah. Jesus does save. It is a little warm, right?
I can take care of that.
So Jared, how do I purchase a fan? Cause I'm like you, I have to sleep with the fan. And if my American fan isn't gonna work, I will need to, I do sleep with a fan. I sleep with my window open still today.
Let me see if
With
I
my
can,
fan.
let me see if I can find you a link for a Type H fan.
Okay. And then you can just send it to me or something.
Yeah, otherwise you can buy converters
Okay.
that, but sometimes buying the converter is cheaper to buy something that has a Type H.
Right.
Do that. Alright, so this is the Hippodrome. And so this, when it was originally built, by Herod, you see how there's seating here and then nothing here? When it was originally built, the sea, wasn't quite this far up, and so it was fully encapsulated, as a round facility. And then eventually the waters destroyed this side, okay? So, and I think one of the earthquakes didn't help either. So, but it was designed with this spinel, which is where we get our word spine for, down the middle, and they would have horse races and chariot races here. One of the things people don't realize is that by the Roman time, chariots weren't really used for battle. They were used more for entertainment. And so, so they do horse races and chariot races. Now the palace that Herod had was right here. And so he had this nice seat on the corner where you could watch the race from his palace. Now why would you want your box seats on the corner of a chariot race? NASCAR enthusiasts will be able to appreciate this, right? Where do the accidents happen more, right? On the curve, right? So if something exciting's gonna happen, yeah, baby. Now, as this gets destroyed, then this becomes used as a theater for gladiatorial battles as Rome gets more brutal and more violent, and even becomes a place of Christian martyrdom, where Christians would be thrown to fight lions and die. Then the place would become redeemed again, where Origen would begin writing, and then more importantly, Eusebius, church theologian, church historian, would live and write and do his ministry here, and become a hub of the early Byzantine era church. And even Byzantine churches being built over where Roman temples had once stood. Eventually a place of the Crusaders and so forth. And for me, one of my absolute favorite sites to take people, to be able to see the world of the book of Acts unfolded right here along the Mediterranean Sea. And all of it is possible because of that psycho Herod the Great. And so, it's good that he's dead. It's nice that there's something left behind. And really, it's a statement, I think, to the way that the Lord can redeem anything. Because Caesarea is also the place where the first Gentile receives the Holy Spirit. This is where Cornelius is at when Peter comes to him. And for us as Gentiles, our part of the story begins here as well. So with that, we'll conclude today's lesson. Thank you guys so much for being here. Pastor Ed, you want to close us in prayer?
Turn the air back up. So let me pray. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to go to Israel and walk where Jesus walked. Father, we just pray that you would just guide us, direct us. Father, help us to live out our lives in such a way that people see Christ in us. And Father, we love you and we appreciate you. We thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for Jared and what he shared with us and what he'll share with us in the future. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'll put it to use.
Hey, yeah.